All right, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lull in the room, so good afternoon and welcome to a City Commission workshop meeting to discuss some recommendations from senior advisors to the Commission as to how to proceed on hiring a new city administrator. We have with us this evening Ken Parker from Senior Advisors. Ken was a city manager for 43 years. Last 18, I believe, in Port Orange. 28 and a half in Port Orange. And has been with Senior Advisors, who is a group of very smart people that help cities find new city administrators. I'll let him define himself better than I can. But he is extremely knowledgeable and has been helpful to us in the past in an advisory capacity. So, Mr. Parker, thank you so much for being here this evening. And we're going to turn it over to you now for...
Good. Thank you, Mayor. Hey, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. And we did provide a memorandum. It's dated July, I think it says July 19th. So I did okay, so kind of let me first start and say what senior advisors are, and then tell you what senior advisors are not. Okay, first, senior advisors, we are all retired city and county managers. There are 9 of us in the state of Florida. And we're located all over the state of Florida. Right now, I'm getting to coordinate all 9 of us. So if it's, for example, today a city out of down in Kansas County called me today and said, "Hey, can you be on do a Zoom meeting with the city council down in Broward County on Wednesday night?" And so I will be doing a similar presentation to them. And then if they decide they would like for us to help them, then we will ask one of the other senior advisors who lives closer to them to do it. So we are not consultants. Let me just say that right up front. This is not what we do for a profession. We do not get paid for what we do. But we're available to cities, and we're available to managers and administrators all across the state of Florida. So a lot of times what people will call us and say, "Oh, did you ever encounter this?" And then we can, if we have not encountered it, we will say, "Well, but I am familiar with the city of DeLand had this issue before them, and then refer them over and get them as a thing. So we are resource people for cities, and we're resource people for city managers and city administrators. The league a lot of times also will refer people to us, and I was in Mount Dora just last week, and based upon one that the Florida League of Cities would refer the city of Mount Dora to me to come over and make some kind of presentation. Not on recruiting of managers. Secondly, senior advisors, and we kind of put in there exactly what we are. But let me differentiate. We're not consultants. Okay? We're not professional recruiting firms. Because that's what they do for a living. We don't. Okay, our services are also available on whether a senior advisor is available. I had talked with Dick Kelton, who had helped you in the past, and Dick said, no, I'm in emeritus status, and that means I don't have to. And so he said no. So I'm the next closest, and we do have one in Orange County, and well, actually we have two in Orange County. So we try to find a senior advisor that is close to the city. And what we did in this memorandum is kind of go through and outline the process. So please understand, okay, you get what you pay for. Okay, so we don't charge you something, but we do ask you to cover expenses. When we say cover expenses, that generally for us would be mileage, and if we had to have meals or something like that, those would be involved in the activity. The second thing that we don't do when we're doing helping a city do a placement is that we say that we are colleagues. We come alongside you, we come alongside your staff, okay, and we work together in a collaborative fashion in order to bring forward the best possible candidates for you. But we're not professionals, so that means, generally speaking, I don't know who's out there that's looking. I don't know who out there that may fit your profile or those types of things. And again, I may, but that's not something that that we do on a full-time basis, and we don't, as I used to say, and we don't have those anymore. We used to have Rolodex files, and you say, okay, and you go through it and say, okay, let me call up Ken and see if he's available. He meets the profile and things like that. But what we do is that if you say you want us to help you, we come alongside you, we develop the material that is necessary to put your city out there to bring forward the best application pool that is available. And when I say the application pool, the applicant pool, is that I like to use the very similar to what you would find in a professional firm. What they do is that they have a brochure that basically provides all of the vital details about your city. It really presents it in a great marketing method, and so you get to see why would I want to come and be a part of your city. So we do that. So that's one of the things that I do. The second thing I do is that there are three aspects of what, whether I do it or whether a professional firm does it or whatever. There are three things that we would be using to sort of set up a criteria by which we would use to screen candidates. The first one is, what does your city charter ordinances say is the responsibility? Okay, that's number one, because that sets out the legal portion of it. The second aspect, if a city has a job description, that's the second aspect that we would use when we're screening the candidates. And the third one is, okay, now we've covered the two legal sides of the house. Now the third one is the one that collectively as a commission, that whether it's us or a professional firm, what they would do is develop what's called the ideal candidate profile. Now, what I always tell governing bodies, I don't care how good we put all those things in there, there is nobody that's going to meet those criteria 100%. But if you can have your rathers, this would be what that candidate would look like. Now, so what type of experience that you want in terms of, for example, one city I worked in said, one of our priorities is infrastructure. Our infrastructure is aging, and we would like to have someone who has experience in infrastructure. In another city that I was working with, they said, we want an individual that has good financial background. And so those began to show up in the ideal candidate profile, and those then go into your job announcement. The professional firms do the same thing. There's a questionnaire that we put out that we would do it. And then what I do, and what I found that professional firms do, they'll come down and they will sit and meet with each member of the governing body, and they will go over your questionnaire, and to be sure they have good understanding, then they will develop that ideal candidate profile. One of the items that I always do, and some of the other senior advisors do a little bit differently, but in my case, this is how I like to do it, is once we get it developed, that brochure developed, or that job announcement developed, then we come back to the city commission and say, this is what you said to us. Is this really what you mean? And then from that perspective, then I ask the governing body to adopt that document, because then that moves it to your document. That becomes yours, because that's what you said you wanted in that job announcement, in that job criteria. Some of the professional firms do that, some don't. But again, that's just the way I operate. Because I want, as a colleague, I want what is in the document that we're putting out reflective of what this governing body wants, and how it markets your city. Now, that may sound bad to say market your city, but in fact, that's what you're doing. Your job announcement on the front side of it tells all the things good about your city. It tells why they would want to come and live in this city. Now, all of you know why they should come and live in the city, but again, you're trying to attract the best candidates possible to come and live in your city. And so that's why that document is so important, and it needs to have great photos of your community. It needs to talk about your community life. It needs to give them the data they need that they can answer, is they're now making it happen. So that's kind of a process, whether you're using senior advisors or you're using a professional firm. Now, where we depart from the professional firms. Number one, we do not do background work, period. That's the city's responsibility. The firms, they do background before they bring their list to you. That's an expense the city would have to bear. That's a timeline that you have to factor into your kind of your formula. The professional firms, they have that ability. They have the staff to do that. So that's generally where time gets cut off of the process, because if you are having to do the background work, then that list has to be created, and you've got to do this and you've got to do that. But usually, when they are bringing you a list, they've already done the background work. That's a major change, difference between senior advisors and those firms. The second thing is, from a senior advisor standpoint, okay, you will find if I was working with you, the list would come, you would, well, let me digress just a little bit. The professional firms, all of the resumes and applications are sent to them. Okay, if a senior advisor is involved and you ask us to handle that, all resumes come to the city, which makes them public records immediately. And they're available immediately. That's a major differential between us and the professional firms. Now, why is that important? Okay, sunshine law, public records law, all of those come into play because if those applications are submitted to those consultants, then until they bring them forward, it's still theirs. At the point that if we're involved, that public record is the public record. Now, your city attorney would probably have to opine if you got involved and somebody made a public records request, so I'm not getting off into the legal aspect of whether the record submitted to the consultant is or is not a public record. But generally speaking, that's the way they handle it. So all of the applications if you're working with us, would come here. Okay, and they're available immediately. And we always said if we're involved, we say to the governing body, begin your review process now. When you get those applications, begin your process of reviewing them, because we're going to be reviewing them too, but that's something. The other item is kind of a departure, and I don't know how, I know how we do it as senior advisors. Okay, let's say on the closing day, we would set a day where a senior advisory team would meet here at this city hall. Okay, and that purpose of that senior advisor team, and we use normally three of our senior advisors, and we will come into this conference room in a public meeting with minutes being taken and everything. And we will discuss each of the applications, each of the resumes, and we will determine whether they fit into three categories. Now, you will never hear us say that an individual is not qualified. What we will say is that the group that is qualified and recommended, they meet the majority or most of your criteria. The ones that are on qualified list, they meet most of your criteria. The ones that are on not recommended meet some of your criteria. And there's some legal issues there, so please understand from that standpoint. And you will never, in every list that you receive from us, they will always be in alphabetical order. You will never see anything coming from us that we have rank ordered any of the applicants, because that's not our job. That's your job. Okay, so I try to say, okay, over here on their side, when the professional firm brings them to you, they've done their background work. Over here, we haven't. All we did is look at the resumes, we've looked at the three criteria, and we have prepared the list based upon those criteria. So I'm just trying to give you, what is sort of the kind of the parameters. Now let's talk about background. If you select senior advisors to come in, if you ask us to come in to work with you and I'll be working alongside you and developing the material, you need to determine who's going to do the background right now. Okay, now, that can cost up to $2,500 per applicant that you've decided that you wanted to shortlist and have them looked at. Up to. Now, so I want you to be, just kind of be aware that there is that expense, and that and it's normally in the professional recruiting firm that's in their pricing. Everyone that I have dealt with, it's in their pricing. Now, there may be one out there that says that's not in my pricing schedule. But I just want you to kind of understand that if you're going to do that, you better get that firm on board now. Because what I have found is that some cities waited till the end and then they said, okay, now we've got our list, now hold it. And that firm or firms are saying, we're 5 to 6 weeks out. And that just pushes the whole calendar out. And that's what I always found. My other recommendation is always go to the highest level of background. Highest level. Not just going in and checking credit reports, don't go in and check traffic, don't go in and check the court records, those types of things, section creditors, those are normal. But no, because you're going to check references, but generally people that are going to give you references are going to give you good reference, no matter what. Some of the firms who do background work actually go on site and look at personnel files. They look to see what's in those personnel files. They do media searches. They do social media searches. They want to look at very much in depth of what this person is. So that when they come to you, you have a good idea if there's any skeletons in the background. I remember when my oldest son was growing up, and we were, okay, this shows you how old I am, by the way, is that Holiday Inn used to have an ad, and it said, the best surprise is no surprise. And so when my son, when we were staying out someplace, Dad, he would say, Dad, we want to stay at the place that the best surprise is no surprise. So television had indoctrinated. But that is wise for you to understand. You do not want to be embarrassed by something because you didn't do the best level of background work. Okay. So now let me, I've gone through some of the items and I've sort of compared all the three, but really you've got three options. Option number one is that you can do the recruitment in-house. Don't need us. We will give you all of the assistance you can. Your people can do all of that. They're going to have to place the ads. Or you can then select the professional firm who will do it all and bring the product back to you. You can use us, and we are collaborative. We work with your staff, we work with you, and develop all the material. Your staff would still have to place the ads, they would get all of the material and everything else. Three options. And there are pluses and minuses of each. If you decide to go with the professional firm, we can provide you with a kind of a boilerplate RFP, and that can be put out there, and you'll probably get 10 or 12. We can provide you with a listing of all the national search firms that are out there. Lee and I, we were talking a while ago, who handles the majority of those that are in Florida. We know those. Plus, there are a few that will come in that are not necessarily, Florida-based. But then there are some policy questions. And on page, I think it's page 2 of your memorandum.
Why do we not have those?
Because this applies no matter what. Okay, number one, policy question number one is basically what is the role you would like citizens to play in the process? Some cities use a citizens advisory committee. Okay, each one of you in those particular cases would appoint, you would have to decide how big the committee would be, and you would need to determine, if it's going to be 10, and how they're going to be appointed, and all those types of things, or if it's 5 or whatever. The last several cities I've worked with, they said, we don't want that, because it lengthens the process. Secondly, the decision is at this body's level. No matter what, in the very end, the decision is still made at this body's level. But there have been some cities that they want their citizens involved. And so that's a policy decision from you. The second portion of that is that, okay, whether or not you use a citizen advisory committee, or if you decide to keep that policy that we're going to be the ones and we're going to be the body that's going to handle that role. A number of councils governing bodies have said, we want, though, to conduct listening sessions. And when I say listening sessions, we want to invite the residents in. It's not the meeting would be conducted by, if we were involved, I'll just use the senior advisors. If we were involved, you would not be the conveners. You all would not be sitting at the desk. Now you're invited to attend, it's a meeting, a public meeting, but we are convening the meeting and we are soliciting input from the residents to tell us what are the attributes that they would want. Now, I've just finished one of those not long ago, and it was an interesting process, and I've seen it done very well. I've also seen it done poorly. So, again, that is, that commission said, no, we wanted to rest with us, but we want the citizens to have input, so we want the listening session. So that's one, those are two policy decisions. The third one is, and I don't think that applies to you, but I did put it in here, if you have an internal candidate that you want to, that you sort of like, okay, we want to throw this out there, but we're really thinking that this is the individual we want, it's one of our internal people, but we just kind of want to kick the tires, so to speak, okay? My advice in those cases, don't do it. Be sure you have thought through that internal candidate and you haven't already decided you want that person in. Because the first question I usually get asked when they call me, and I know the professional firms get asked the same question, is there an internal candidate and is the city commission just going through the motions? Now, you're going to get some applicants and all of that, but you may not get the best applicants. So that's why I put that as a policy question, because that one is something that a person that is thinking about applying is really going to think real serious, especially in Florida, because of the public records issue, of whether they're going to send their resume over to you or not. Now, whether it is senior advisors or the professional firms won't tell you this. Okay. What we have seen, it's been my experience, and I've worked on a number of these projects, is that it's easy for the governing body to get discouraged. Get discouraged in the process. Okay. Because, and I'll just speak from the senior advisor standpoint. Here's what we normally find. Okay, on the front end, normally you get kind of a slug of them coming in. They normally are individuals that are members in transition. And those are members that get some military in that. You will get generally some of the young professional people that may have experience, as an assistant department head. You may get an assistant city manager or something like that. That will be in that, generally speaking, in that first glut of people that'll come in. I can't tell you how many will be there or whatever. Then there's going to be a trough. Okay? And you will get trickles. People, they'll be sending their resumes in, and they'll be trickling in. Then as you grow to the very end, in Florida, and I'm talking about Florida managers, generally speaking, that's when they're going to put theirs in. It's right at the end. And the reason is, okay, I've got to make a decision whether I'm going to risk my current position by applying. Because as soon as it's out there, okay, it's out there. Everybody knows. The governing body knows, and all of that. So you can expect some on the very front side, and there's going to be probably a trough in the middle, and there, generally speaking, is that you will see some at the end, and a lot of times those are the ones that are the most qualified. Not always, but some most of the time. So, and that's why a lot of times in that trough period, that's when I hear governing bodies getting a little bit discouraged because we're not getting good applicants. Now, the professional firms, they pick up the phone and start calling people. And if they're not getting the quality of applicants that they want, they will come back to you and say, why don't we extend for a period so that we can call additional people. They don't put it exactly like that. But in fact, that's what they're doing. They're going out and they are really, calling people, trying to encourage them to apply and things of that sort. Now, we can do the same thing, but our network is not theirs. So I just kind of want to be, I want to be up front so that everybody understands that what the differentials are. Now let's move to, okay, so the policy questions, the commission will need to answer those policy questions, and I think that's a discussion that you will need to answer. Okay, now let's begin looking at what the timelines generally are. And again, these are general timelines. Please understand that I found some cities go fast, and I found some cities go slow. Number one, okay, is when you make a decision, that's when the clock starts. So, for example, if you say, okay, we're going with a professional firm, I'll just put that one out there, then your purchasing ordinances are going to cover the length of time that has to be on the street. Okay, it also covers, you're going to have a meeting where you're going to interview them, or they're going to interview the firms, and it may be going to shortlist them and saying this is the only one that we're going to interview. And then you select, then you've got, and what we would also suggest to you is they submit a copy of their contract as a part of their package, so that, or maybe Scott, I know your city attorney, maybe Scott puts in the RFP a copy of the contract that he wants to use, and then they can then tell you what they would make a little bit different. Because if you're sitting and having to negotiate that contract, then it just extends that out. So if everybody has a thing up front, either you give them a copy of your contract up front, or they give you a copy of their contract. And most city attorneys have seen the major firms out there; they've seen all their contracts. So Scott will not be surprise in whomever the professional firm is. Okay? Because once that contract is started, that's when it moves forward. That's when they start their work. So normally, if your purchasing ordinance said, let's say, for example, for them, that you've got to have 15 days on the street, I don't know what it is in your city, but let's just say for that, okay, then you're probably a month before you're shortlisted and before that consulting firm is open. Okay, if you say to you want to use senior advisors, based on our availability, we would start based on when you said go. Okay. Then we would then begin the process, and they would too. They would begin the process of developing that recruitment brochure. In our case, we would be working with your staff to develop it. We would provide them with a copy of a template, okay, and say, here's what it should look like, and here's the type of information that you want in it that will be attractive to a candidate. You would receive from me a copy of a questionnaire, and we would say, fill this questionnaire out, and we would ask you to return it to me. Now, those are public record. Now, the consulting firm, when they do it, it's not public record, because they're probably not going to give you the questionnaire. They're probably going to sit down with you and ask you the question. We would then, I would then meet with you individually. So you'd have to give me 1 hour. So we would try to work around your schedule, but understand, I'm a volunteer. My schedule, if my grandkids are going to be playing a half-leg event, I guarantee where my priority is going to be. That's just blunt. If I'm traveling, because I've got a son that's moving, I may have to tell you, I'm going to have to pass this off to George, because I'm going to be out of town. I'm going to be helping my son move. The consulting firm doesn't have that, okay, from his standpoint. The consulting firm is operating on your timeline, not on my time. I have found that we're able to accommodate you. But I just want to be upfront with you. If my family schedule or one of my other schedules conflicts, I want you to know where my priority is going to be. So we got the profile developed. Okay, in our case, I found it normally takes about 3 weeks from the time we start to the time that the document is ready. Now that's where the professional firm begins to make up the time, I can tell you. Because they develop these, it's a template, to be honest with you. Now they'll fill in the blanks and all the other things. Now the ideal candidate profile is yours. Okay. We're now on the street. So we're now about 45 days into the process, whether you're with them or with us, we're 45 days in. Then normally the endorsement process is about 30 days. About 30 days. So if we were starting in August, so August would be generally the period of time that we would get all the documents ready and out the door. September would be the period of time where the advertisements would be out there. Then we're into October. Depending on how long it takes to get your background work done, you could be interviewing about the second week in October. So I'm just trying to give you some realistic dates and things out there. Then, then you make the decision. And depending upon the individual candidate that you select, and depending upon their own contract with their own local government, will set the final timeline of when they would be here. Normally, managers that are employed is normally 60 days. Some managers have 90 days in their contract. That's not the norm, but I have seen it. That they, in some cities, will waive that requirement. Most don't. So kind of think about that. So you're now out into probably mid-December, first of the year, if we started today. Now, you know, and I'm just trying to give you the long, so that everybody would say, okay, hey, Ken said 1st of December. No, it could be, depending upon a lot of factors, but that's what I see, 5 months, 6 months of running in the process. Now, let me go over some other policy discussions that you probably need to be thinking about. Okay, I want you to think about interview. Because a lot of cities never think about that. Then they've never thought up in their mind how they're going to handle it now when that list comes through. And it's time for you to think about that way up here, because here's what I'm also going to be telling the candidates. This is their process. And hopefully the professional firms will be talking about a process too. Is that when you get to the interview phase, we would have already provided you, and professional firms do the same thing. They'll help you develop the questions that you need to be asking the candidates. So you'll have some samples, but then you have to decide what you're going to do. And I know your city attorney is going to advise you, be sure you ask the same questions to all of the candidates. And there's some legal issues there. Okay, now, so we've got the questions. We normally recommend a 3-day process. And so 3 days, that's a long, long time. Now, day 1, is the arrival day. They begin coming in. They normally, on day 1, I meet with them. A designated member of your staff meets with them. Okay, they get an opportunity to tour the community. They get an opportunity to visit with your employees. They get a chance to rejoin separate rotations, so they get a chance to see, what it is here. And they get a chance to talk with Lee and say, okay, what are the issues that are currently on the table, on the front burners? They get to talk with the department heads, and they get to do all that. So at the end of day 1, normally that's about a 4-hour activity. Your city designate, and I will meet with them again. And again, the professional firms handle it differently. I'm just talking about how senior advisors handle it. And we would say, is there anything that you need for tomorrow? And generally, they tell us if, based upon what I've heard today, here's some things I think I'll need. And then your staff can get that stuff and get it to them. It's like day 2. Long day for you, a long day for them. Because they will have individual interviews with each of them. And they would rotate through all 5 of them. So normally, the lists are normally 5 individuals are being interviewed. Some do more, but normally it's 5. Sometimes it's less, but if it is, that we work out that schedule. But they would then interview with you. Okay, that 1 hour is that they get a chance to hear your heartbeat, and you get a chance to hear theirs. Also, those questions that you're going to ask in the formal side, well, you're not limited in those individual interviews. It's more of a dialogue going on between you, because you got to determine whether or not this is a good fit. So it's a good fit. At the end of those interviews, I always suggest to the governing body that they do a community reception. Okay. The commission is the host. You're responsible for turning out the crowd. And so what you really are doing in that particular situation is that you're observing how do they interact with our residents, and then how do our residents interact with them. It is also an opportunity for the resident to come up to you and say, hey, I was talking to this particular applicant, and did you know? And some things like that, and it allows you to have some input. Normally there's some light refreshments and some things like that. Normally it's a 2-hour activity. At the midpoint of that session, the mayor says, hey, and I want to introduce our candidates, and then each candidate is able to speak for no more than 2 minutes. It basically is an introduction and things of that sort. Okay, but that's the kind of that format. And at the end of that day, if I were involved, I would be there throughout this process. I would be there all 3 days. And I would be and my job is to keep time. Be sure that everybody stays on track, and that when the 1 hour bell rings, okay, everybody, let's change chairs and let's get moving forward and keep the process moving forward. At the end of the reception, your city designee and I would meet with the candidates. And we would say, what do you need for the formal interview process that will be happening tomorrow? And then they can tell us if they need some additional information or whatever, based upon what they've heard, in the individual, sessions with you, and what they have heard from the community during that reception period. Day 3 is the formal interview process. When I say formal, this is when they are doing the public interview portion of that process. It's normally 1 hour. The first 5 minutes, they get to introduce themselves and tell you why they want to be your city administrator. The next approximately 45 to 50 minutes, you get to question them in the public forum. The last 5 minutes, they get to summarize and tell you why you should hire them as your city administrator. And we make it real clear that we will expect them to comply with that timeline. So as that hour shows up, you'll see me in the back room stand up. And I will give you a 5 minute, a 4 minute, a 3 minute, a 2 minute, a 1 minute, and a clenched fist tells you time up. Now we always put 10 minutes in between candidates. And the reason is we know that y'all got things you need to be doing too. Things like going to the bathroom. And you may have to make some calls or some things like that, because if you're working and all that, there's still things you got to do on your normal thing. So normally we put about a 10-minute break in there. The other item is that I tell every one of the candidates, I can't tell you, you cannot come to the meeting, because they're public meetings. I can't tell them they can't come, but I can tell them this. Professional managers don't do that because that's unethical. For them to be sitting in the room when other candidates are being interviewed, it's unethical. What I find is that I've never had a candidate sit in the room watching on TV or anything. I've never had that. Normally, we put them in, we find a space, and all 5 of them are together, because I can monitor. And so I go in and all that. Okay. Now, after all the formal interviews are done, it's been my experience with professional firms and what I do is that they will come in and say, "Are you ready to make a rank ordering of the candidates?" Now, some governing bodies do it this way. They want to know where everybody's at right now. Okay, so there's usually a sheet passed out, and all the candidates' names are listed in alphabetical order, and then you rank the candidates 1 through how many y'all give them. Those are passed to the clerk. Clerk announces, okay, how the mayor's number is, the vice mayor's number, whatever, how they got them ranked. And then, so you kind of decide, okay, are we now grouping people? Is there some that all of us are agreeing that this grouping right here doesn't, we're dropping them off the list already. Other governing bodies want to discuss it before they rank. That's the policy issue, and there's not a right way or a wrong way. I just did one on, Monday night, and they wanted to prepare their list and then see where we are. And what they found is that they were clustered together, so they didn't have to go through any more discussion, because it was obvious that hey, these candidates were the one, and how they were ranked together or put together. But that's a policy issue, and there's, like I say, not a right way, a wrong way, or anything else. But I found some governing bodies say, I'm not ready yet. And I want to think about it. Now, if you do that, then you need to be prepared to say when you're going to reconvene and when you're going to make this decision. The bad side of that type of situation, you're going to send the candidates home. And so they may decide on the way home now, okay, they delay this, and delay this, and I don't know if I really want to go to work. So just kind of, you got to weigh it. Plus, when you select the one, you've got them there, and you're ready to negotiate the contract and get it done. Let's say, okay, now we've got it, you've said, yes, we're ready to make the decision, you've ranked the order up, and now we've decided that this is the one. I would go back to the room where they all are, and I would tell that particular candidate the commission wants to speak to you. And I would express on behalf of the commission to the other 4 or 5 or how many are there, that the commission was very appreciative of you being here. They were impressed with your credentials and everything else. And all of us have gone through that process, so it's not anything that, that we all know there's going to be one. We all know. And what I've always found is that all of those congratulate the one and wish that person the best, and they also wish that person their support. I've never had them going out of the room, mumbling and grumbling. They've always gone out of the room and they've always told the candidate, congratulations, and can we help you? Okay, now I've gone through 45 minutes of what this memorandum said. Okay, what are your questions?
I don't have any of, we've been down this path before.
Yeah, you have it.
Me a long time ago.
I mean, the only thing that I will add to the whole process, and it's not anything that I heard you say, I can't wait for you to say it. One of the real issues as far as being expeditious is concerned is that you will lose candidates. The longer you drag your feet, the better the chance that they find another job someplace else, or will be tied with the process and do one. So it's best to stay on that. Whether we use you guys or a professional firm. And the other thing I didn't hear you say, and I don't remember from the past, is do you have an understanding of the ballpark price that professional firms charge? I think there's people here that don't know the answer to that should know.
I've seen them 25,000.
I just have a question to ask on that. I've been through this a long time ago, but anyhow, how much time, when you bring up the 5, 4, 3, whatever it is, okay? How much time do we have to look and go through their records and see what they're, what they've been doing or what they haven't been doing? To be able, how many days would we have as a commission to go over that? To check their record and see what's happened. Because, to be honest with you, the one time we didn't take the time to check it and we ended up in trouble. So that's why I'm asking that question.
There are two aspects of that question, okay? That's why, if you recall up on the front side, I said, as the applications come in, begin reviewing them right then. Don't wait till the end. Now, there are also some things that you can do that, okay, what we will also tell the candidates, don't call and talk with any of the commission members, and commissioners don't talk to them. Okay, and if they do, you need to report that to me, and so that I can report it to the whole commission that you have been contacted by this individual or somebody on their behalf has contacted you. The same thing, I ask the candidates the same question, and I will inform the commission that this candidate has reported to me that he has been contacted by a member of the governing body. And so that everybody's up front, because you want this to be an open process, and we want it to be a fair process. Okay. Now, the second part of that question is that, in terms of timing and all of those types of things, if you have done some of your preliminary work, and I'm just talking about you will not have the in-depth of the background, but you can do some things online, you can search their names, and you can find out a lot of things out there. Some of it's true, some of it's not, and we know all of that. And I remember some years ago, one of those sons got real upset about what some people were saying about me, and I said, Jay, is it true? He said, no. And I said, why are you upset? But understand, you can look at a few items and begin to formulate in your mind, when that final list comes through, who do you want to send forward to have the background investigation? If something pops up out there, you may want to somebody say to me, hey, I saw this on this particular individual, and I can contact them and say, hey, give me an explanation of this, or provide me the documentation so that I can give it back to you.
Aligning from what Mr. Commissioner Basso said earlier, you said something in what was the ballpark figure for a professional firm?
I've seen them starting at about 25.
Okay.
Now, you can check, I would tell this city, you can check with Flagler Beach. They had just gone through this process. They just hired one of the firms.
Okay, to continue on with that, so just with a ballpark figure, roughly speaking, if we decided to go with you, you say roughly, you say 5 candidates, so that's 12,500 just to do the highest level background check. What is your estimate and ballpark figure of what you think it would cost with your gas, travel, hotels, per diem, just an average?
Well, from my standpoint, it's the IRS mile bill times 22 miles. And I'm going to sleep at my own bed in my own house.
That's good, because you're close by, so that's.
I live in Port Orange.
So it would be to the benefit of Lake Helen to basically go with you with your services. And I commend you on your resume and bio. I read it, it was very impressive. So thank you very much for coming here tonight as well.
So that's sort of, just from the standpoint, okay, when we bring in, I always bring 3 advisors, 2 to me when we review. And normally I use the 2 that are here in Central Florida. And so to try to hold down any of our expenses that we charge to the city.
Kenny, I just have one more question, and that is, in this case, do I understand you right, that if we review somebody, find out there's some problems there in one way or another, that we can touch base with you and go over this? So I'm just going over what we've done before, you know what I mean? I just want to double check. I don't want a rumor. I want to make sure we got some proof to it.
So I'll use an example. I got a call that a city I'd worked with, and they said this individual had a misdemeanor. And so we were able to contact that individual, get the information. What happened is that the judge withheld adjudication. The judge had sealed the record, but it's still out there in the public domain. So I was able to provide that to the governing body, and then it's up to them to deal with how they want to handle it. From a legal standpoint, okay, the records, it's been expunged, but from a practical standpoint, it hasn't, because it's still out there. Okay, when it gets on social media, it's still out there.
Yeah, it never disappears. Go ahead.
Do you mind if I ask if you or your group recently worked with Oak Hill, Edgewater over there or with their hiring processes?
I was involved in their interim, working with them when they hired their interim manager, but not when they made him their permanent manager.
They're for Oak Hill? For Oak Hill?
I'm working with Oak Hill right now.
Okay.
Okay, Oak Hill is at the point of doing background right now. That's where they are. That's where I was Monday night.
And they've been through the process they've been looking for a while now, correct?
Correct, but part of the delay was on their own side because they determined that they wanted to advertise a little bit longer, and then we had the reports ready and we were prepared to meet on this date, and their commission moved the date backwards. So some of their delays are based upon their governing body, some of the decisions their governing body made.
Okay.
Y'all control the calendar to a large extent. Because I don't tell you when you meet. The governing body determines that.
That's one of the easiest decisions we make, and it still takes us way too long sometimes. What are y'all's thoughts in the commission about whether or not you want to go with senior advisors here, or whether or not you want to go with a headhunting firm?
I personally would go with the professional firm.
Okay.
Just my
You want to give some of your support for that, or just kind of throw in? Is that what you throw in?
You're gonna pay for the background checks, and with the professional form, you're not going to. And I just think that they're gonna probably go after maybe a higher quality of applicants or something. I just feel more comfortable doing it that way.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not asking because I think you're wrong. I'm
Right,
just asking
right,
because we want to talk it out. As Parker said, that sometimes they will be more, I'm not sure the word you use, but they may be more aggressive
And you get
in
what you pay
seeking.
for, he said.
Well, to some extent.
He said that.
Yeah, I know. And he said that they have a bigger base sometimes to reach out to.
Right.
Their Rolodex is more, perhaps bigger.
No, I understand, because my recommendation is always the professional firm up front, because they, from the standpoint, that's what they do.
Right.
That's what they do. That's all they do.
I'm wondering if there's not a hybrid option. I know you said that you would collaborate with our staff, but is there not an option to save us money on the front end before going with the firm? To keep
That's
that
what-
price down?
Yeah, that's what we have looked at, because I'd asked Lee, to search your records the last time we went out last time. What was it that was prepared at that time? And I think the clerk, your deputy, she did an extensive search and was able to find, not able to find some stuff. But, and I've asked Dick Kelton, and I'm going to go back and look and see what Dick sent me. Because that was my thought process, if there was some material that had already been produced maybe, 3 years ago? 3 years ago, that may help shorten the process. That even that document provided to the executive search firm, that's why I say it sort of begins to compress the document.
My only thought on that would be is if we were going to hire a professional firm, we'd probably want to do that as quickly as possible. I mean, anything we can do to shorten the process, I think, is advantageous. If we were to decide to hire one, would y'all still be available for some consultation, or do you just come back out of that?
No. See, we're available.
I used the wrong word, not consultation.
That's one of the things that we do with cities. Now I'm not going to get in conflict with your professional firm, but, we're available as a resource to a city. That's what we do.
Mr. Dunn?
I'm inclined to agree with Commissioner Bishop. First of all, though, I think that we look at this one option, but we haven't seen the second option of going with a headhunter. I know in the past, when I've dealt with them, they typically charge a commission based on the salary. And then they also will do the background checks, high level, low level, whatever you want. So it's really up to the commission to decide how much you want to put into a professional firm. I do agree with him. I would go with the highest level up to it, including drug testing. Questioning, I would think that it would be prudent for everybody who's looking at the questions for the candidates to ensure that they do follow EEOC guidelines, because so many people get in trouble by asking questions that do not follow those guidelines. And I imagine you're familiar with that from owning a business. So, but I am inclined to agree with Commissioner Bishop, at least to take a look and see what they also have to offer. But then also, as Commissioner Rutledge said, maybe do a hybrid. Let's coordinate maybe with other groups and see how it works.
Roger, what are your thoughts?
I was looking at the cost factor of it and everything, and if we went with the group, like you said, he's gonna stay at his house except from the time that he's helping his son move, and the other guy, whatever he's gonna charge. You figure that's gonna run us about $2,000 for the mileage and stuff like that for them to do it. Then the background checks, you know, can be upwards of $2,500 per candidate, if you go 5 candidates, another $10,000. So that's $12,000 right there. A professional firm is not going to absorb the cost at $5,000 in the background check, so that's going to be added into.
No,
So
that's,
they're
that
going to
was
be,
included with the.
And
well, not if this firm, not if we hire a $5,000 firm.
Oh, right, yeah.
And
So we could get 30 applicants, a lot of them right out of college that,
And then,
might not have anything, but still, if we're doing background checks, it'll add up.
and then, so you're figuring the professional team's probably going to be about $20,000. So, you know, there's only $8,000 difference between them, so it's, I think professional team, like you said, would be more apt to be on the calendar and meeting the deadlines. And if we decide to try to hesitate, I know that they'll be coming after us and saying, pushing us and saying, no, 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 no. So I'm kind of leaning towards a professional group doing
Is there a limit on how many, if you go with a professional group, can you have like Mayor Cameron just said 30 people apply?
Well, that's,
And background checks included with that?
once you advertise to the public, and I'm not sure how a professional head on their team would do it, but once you advertise, anybody can apply. And if one of the things you want to do is background check right up front, about the first thing you want to do is that background check to weed people out quickly. That could add up. I don't know that we'll get 30 applicants. It can happen. I've seen that list grow.
Experience in the hire a professional firm, is it going to be an additional cost? Do they have a limit of how many applicants?
That depends on our contract with the firm, as to whether or not they absorb those costs or not. Ms. Brassey?
Actually, I have a question, I guess, for the current commission and former commission. Have we ever used a professional firm in this case in the past?
it. I have not.
No.
Okay. I couldn't recall it, so that's why I was asking. So this would be the first time. Maybe breaking the chain of going with, no offense to the senior advisors. We appreciate all of your time and all the input that you've given us over the years, but maybe breaking that chain and looking for that candidate through a professional firms, it would be a better option. And as Commissioner Eckert said, the numbers are relatively close, if I'm not misspeaking. So, thank you for that.
3 of the national firms,
Mm-hmm.
their representatives for Florida live in Volusia.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Well, there you go.
It's a great place to live.
Well,
Yeah.
that's 3 which you may decide none of those firms you want.
Well, that's
But 3 of them, there are 3 of them.
It's a question, let's say we get 30 applicants in, the headhunters are not going to automatically do background checks on those 30. They will eliminate, condense down to what they believe to be the best candidates based on whatever skills that you tell them you need, what areas of expertise. Everybody else gets.
And it's easier for a firm to use that type of professional judgment than it is for us in-house. When we're saying, I don't much like this guy, we won't bother, that gets real touchy when you're doing it within our own staff.
One of the, I can speak with one, but I would imagine they all use a very similar. They do pre-interviews. So they will pick up the phone and they will start calling and they will interview the candidates before they submit their list because their professional reputation is on.
But can I finish with it?
Sure.
I love the idea that you came up with having the citizens meet the candidates. So that's why, with Heather, if we can kind of blend it, I think that's a great idea because now the citizens also get to take a look at the candidate.
Well, at some point, no matter what we do, because of the sunshine law, once we start having the commission involved, it becomes a public meeting and the citizens will be invited.
I
So,
like his ideas, you know, in some of the meetings in City Hall, some of the walls and rafters were about to come down.
It gets interesting quickly.
Yeah, so, you know, the way he's doing it, it really kind of brings it in, almost like a beauty contest.
oh boy. Sorry, a lot of images went through my mind and not what you necessarily think. No, that's what I mean, not necessarily what you think. Mr. Bassett, one second. You haven't weighed in yet as whether.
No, you know, I'm on my way out. Everybody in this room already knows that. And I want the will of the commission to be working with and moving forward. I think the lag time on a professional firm will be on the front end right now, but they will make it up in the back. So I think time-wise, I think it's going to be similar. And I think that candidate-wise, the pool will be similar. Okay. I don't want you guys to fool yourself into thinking that there's only going to be $6,000 or $8,000 difference between one and the other. I don't. I think you should be prepared that it's probably going to be about $20,000 or $25,000. I'm not advocating that you don't go that way. I'm amiable to either process. I really am. And because I'm not going to be here, I would go with the will of the commission is going to be here. So with that said, I think either path has its strengths and its weaknesses, and I don't think that we can go wrong either way. One of the things that we've done in the past, we've been a very frugal community. We've had always watched our pennies as far as budgets were concerned, and I really think that influenced decisions in the past that we did. I've always been impressed with the depth of knowledge that your firm has, and I can see where the process either way would be positive. Now, if the commission wants to hire a firm because that's where they want to spend their money, I applaud them, because it's an important decision, and you know, they can feel confident in the fact that people that have only been on this commission for 1 or 2 or 3 years may not have the depth of knowledge. Now they've got professionals out there that are working for them on the clock. They are consultants, they are doing that. And so I'm really willing to go in either direction. It doesn't, I just as soon do the will of the commission.
Kenny, I have a question for you, being that you've been in this for a few years that I know of. But anyhow, in your time frame, do you feel, how much do you feel the difference is if we go to a professional outfit compared to your outfit, basically? Is our realm of candidates going to be a lot more, or a little bit more? But the difference, my opinion is, are we going to have outside people or local people? More one way or another, Kenny?
Both of us will make people aware. I'm talking about, you know, within our profession, because both groups will advertise with FCCMA, Florida Relief. They will advertise with ICMA, both groups.
Okay.
But the difference is that in my own experience, is headhunting firms pick up the phone and they call people. That's the difference. That's the major difference.
A little bit more aggressive marketing, if you will.
Right, because from their perspective, they work the profile, and they say, I think that this individual meets that profile, and they will call. Now, if I know of somebody, I will do it, and I will make senior advisors in other states aware of it and things of that sort. But a lot of times I won't know who's looking either. And that's the other part of that equation, is that sometimes those professional firms know who's looking, and they know maybe that young rising star too, and that this city would be perfect for them. That's an assistant manager or a deputy manager or something like that. That doesn't mean that we don't know them, it just means that they aggressively go after them.
What makes me feel so good, Kenny, finishing up my question, is it makes me feel good knowing you for so many years and stuff, that you're still gonna be behind us. You know what I mean, helping us with this process. That makes me feel good.
Absolutely. Somebody's got to push us off the edge of the cliff.
Ms. Brass?
So my question is, if we move forward with searching for a firm, what's that process look like? Is that bog us down in time? Or, I mean, you mentioned 3 were in Volusia, which is wonderful, but there's so many more you also stated. So how would that process begin? Would we put an RFP out for firms, or do we seek for firms? How is that collectively? It's,
You have to put out an RFP for search firms. You have to advertise, shortlist, commissioners to hire, do a contract. That's going to take at least 6 weeks.
That's where the front end slowdown is, and then they catch up in the.
okay.
Can I be brutally honest?
Yes, sure. I wanted to say a few brutally honest things too, so I'll let you go first.
The last count that I recall is probably too old, but there's probably no more than about 3,000 city managers, experienced city managers in the country. PEs, you probably got 1 million or so, but on advertising. The pool is very limited to those who really are experienced to do the job that you would be looking for.
What's a PE? I'm sorry.
Professional engineering.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just picked one.
Yeah.
And our economics are not the greatest. As you know, we're highly dependent on residential property tax. We have very little commercial base. What's the term you use?
Frugal.
Well, no, when you talk about the
Modest.
no income, you used a neat term. The same, we're just income deficient or something like that.
Anyway,
Well, it's a good one. But we really don't have a lot of money to attract somebody. Now you're paying me a sum that I think is perfect. If you're looking for somebody who is coming up with a profession, they're not really going to be excited about $120,000 a year. They go to Daytona Beach for $250,000 and look for that. So they're going to be looking in there. You're going to find somebody either on their way up, who is starting out a profession, on their way down, or
someone with a chicken.
or somebody who can't get a job anywhere else. You're right. And you're not going to find somebody from outside the state. If you do, you're going to be talking about moving expenses, families, and things like that. You're going to be looking primarily for people in the state. So to have somebody like the FCCMA, who is virtually all the managers in the state to start with, you're going to have a good cross-section of known who is an applicant who is.
I'm glad you brought that point out, because one of the things I was going to say, if you choose to go, or if we choose to go with a professional firm, I think you also have to consider you're going to pay significantly more money for your candidate.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you don't, then I think you're wasting your money going with a professional firm. Does that make any sense?
No.
Yet again, you get what you pay for.
Well, you hope that you do.
A professional firm will put out an absolutely magnificent brochure.
And I'm not saying not to do that, but if we're looking at, spending.
No, I meant like your administrator, if you will.
Right.
You get what you pay for.
Well, you hope, okay? But my point was.
You can pay a lot without getting any return on your investment, but you'll never get the top dollar person without paying.
Right.
Well, and I'm not arguing against it, I really don't.
Right.
I just, the reality to me is that, once again, the pool. There was a time here where, when we were looking transitionally, I think Becky was around, and she wasn't prepared quite yet. And so to bring in someone from out of town who's looking to retire to Florida, who's at the end of their career, they want to put in 5 years and train this person that's here on staff to be their replacement. That's not a bad philosophy, okay? And so, and that was in our wheelhouse of financial ability, okay? Because that person was willing to take less and bring a lot to the table because he gets to come to Florida. We first of all, you have to look at what do we want right now? Do we want that new and rising star? If we do, you put the money on the table. Okay, that's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's the wrong decision. I just think that if you really should identify what you want, tell me if I'm wrong, Ken, before you decide actually how you're going to go get it. And that's is worthy of discussion.
The brutally honest that I was going to be was similar, starting out similar, is that we are a very small, modest city. And you're right, we're not going to be able to be competitive with bigger cities. We can't. Not for the top dollar CAs out there. And the other thing is, back to the brutally honest part, is we often look for a savior almost in the city administrator or city manager position. And it's much more of a marriage. It's a relationship, and they're just one part of the machine. They can, if you put a Maserati engine in a go-kart, you're still not going to go very fast. And it's probably going to have an ugly ending. We have to realize that a lot of this relationship is on us. The fact that this current relationship is broken down doesn't mean we can just go out and find the next person and everybody's going to be hunky-dory. We need to be a little bit self-aware here and realize that we need to up our own game as much as we can in this process. If I'm unhappy in my marriage, I really better be looking at myself, because maybe I can change myself a little bit. It's really hard to change your spouse or a friend or whatever kind of relationship you're in. You better be looking at yourself, because that's the only place where you can really make any effective changes, and even that's really hard. Even if I know I bite my nails and shouldn't, I don't, but I mean, it's a simple little habit. That's really hard for people to break. The things that we see in ourselves, we need to be self-aware that we're like Helen. Not that we're bad, but we need to work on our strengths and try and step up. Use this as an opportunity to step up our game and be a better city for somebody to come and when you're courting, you put on your best outfit and you go out and you try and do your best. And we better do that, and then we better keep it up as a city. We better up our game here, because we've had unhappy endings to relationships several times in a row here. Now it's rarely a happy ending of any relationship, but it can be, and we can up our game. I guess that's what I'm saying is we need to up our game, and we can. Let's do our best to do that. When we put our brochure together, our marketing brochure to advertise ourselves out there, and we are answering questions that either Senior Advisors brings to us or a firm, let's use this process to make ourselves better. Because every question that they ask us that we're putting into said brochure is an opportunity for self-reflection. And honestly, we've got issues. We all know.
We have the Chamber of Commerce that does all of that. We don't even have that anymore.
Yeah, and I'm not saying anything that y'all don't know, but I'm just saying it out loud. And I want this to be an opportunity for growth for us. And hopefully we can all look at it that way. And also an opportunity or not an opportunity, but this is not a time where we think, well, this person finally is going to be, they're going to fix us. They're going to make us perfect. Because that's what we've been needing all along is Mr. Jones or Mrs. Jones over here is going to make us all better. No, we're still going to be like Helen, and we're going to be bringing somebody in that hopefully will help us come alongside us. But we got to come alongside of them too. And I just wanted to say that out loud here. I do a little too much of that sometimes. But we had two proponents of going to a professional firm, a hybrid, willing to go with either. I'm kind of the same way. I'm a little willing to go with either. I think headhunter firms can sometimes pull a rabbit out of the hat, but I do believe it is a relatively small pool. like both of you have said, this is not a,
For our size community.
for our size community, yeah, it really is. And the FCCMA advertising pool of candidates is not that hard to find. You know exactly how to find them, just like any headhunter firm would. So I think my vote would be to go with senior advisors, or my preference would be to go with senior advisors, but
I am, here's a part of me that's, wishes was different, but it's not, it's real. I'm gone for a couple of weeks, I'll be back for a few weeks, I'll be gone for 2 or 3 weeks again, I'll be gone. I'm gonna be gone a lot during this process. And one of the things that going with Ken's group, and I enjoy the process, I enjoyed it in the past, and I enjoy going forward. I really got a tremendous amount of knowledge from you guys. But one of the things, it puts more responsibility on this commission.
yeah,
It does, that's just a fact.
yeah.
And we have a relatively young commission to begin with, and I would rather lean towards going with a professional to be supportive of that. And because I'm not going to be there.
And my other thing that supports it heavily is that we have it. And it might be worth worth the money to be able to say we tried it, at least we tried.
We're going to have to explain all decisions to our constituents anyway, but I think we're making a good argument for going with a professional firm.
Right.
Well, this meeting starts the process. To be able to go any further, we call a special meeting so we can make a decision and vote on it.
Yeah, if we decide by
Otherwise,
consensus.
it's going to be almost at the end of next month because of
Meeting.
the city's conference.
Sure. Yeah, we'll have to do that regardless.
Somebody call this a workshop or is this a special meeting?
Did we actually call this a special meeting?
No, it's a
It's a workshop, okay.
Just one thing else, not any easy for me to say, but I'm telling you, I think in this position, if we were a bigger town, had more things it's done. But I'll be honest with you, after knowing that gentleman for so many years, and I think it's a point that he knows certain people that are in the area more, and maybe he might know, like you said, Kenny, some assistant manager or something like that, that would be looking to step up. And I think this way here with Kenny, it'll be a lot quicker. We can get moving and start getting things done. That's all I got to say.
Thank
Can we hold you to that?
you. Haven't been able to before.
Hasn't worked yet.
We could just go county and not worry about it.
We could do what?
Go county and not worry
We could
about
just
it. Become county.
disencharter our city.
What?
Yeah, there's
I'm kidding.
it is an option.
The rate we're going is not happening anywhere.
It won't happen unless we make it happen.
The Queen Elizabeth County would be so positive.
You know me.
Well, Commissioner Eckert is correct. We'll have to call a special meeting to go forward, whichever we do. Sounds like we're leaning towards a headhunter firm, but
Do you guys have a contract that we would go with you, or is it just handshake?
What's up?
If we decide to go with the FCCMA,
There's no contract.
it's just a handshake, okay.
I'll provide all that you've prompted on put his name.
Oh, good.
I've already got it. Okay. You want the city issues?
We need to hire him.
what's it?
This one here happens to be Lady Lake had used
Okay.
a headhunting firm. So, and I have provided it to other cities that used it.
Well, as you said, we need to do this sooner rather than later. I know you're going to be out of town, but we can soldier on. I know you won't mind, because we need to get the process moving. We should
I
all
don't need to
wait.
be at a meeting out on the wrong end before long weather.
So how?
I would just want to waste my time.
Yeah.
Well, why waste anybody else's?
Yeah, you're not, you never waste our time anyway, so, I do not have my phone with me in my calendar, but I don't have any major plans, so just throw out a date and I'll make it work.
Tomorrow.
Or do you want staff to simply call everybody and do it that way?
Is there a time constraint on ordering a special meeting as far as advertising and everything?
meetings.
I agree with Charlene, I think it should be one. I mean, I don't know if you can make that, but
Marilyn,
if you want to
can I
ask
just
them.
throw a point of discussion? Just kind of throw in that you're calling a special meeting, I just don't understand, is that to present to the citizens that you're going forward with headhunters, or?
No, well, in a workshop meeting, when you call a workshop meeting, you can't take any action.
Right.
And in order to send out an RFP or anything like that, we have to have a special meeting so that we can take action and decide to send out that RFP and start the process for either hiring a firm or either way we go, we're gonna have to have a special meeting to start the process. Or we could wait until the next regular commission meeting, but that's the way, why would we do that?
Well, I guess what my question is does that give you time to contact some headhunters, negotiate with them, and then have that to present at the special meeting?
No, you can't do that. We have to,
You have to pick
We
one.
have to send it out for bid.
and we have to vote which way we're gonna go to, so.
Yeah.
There may be multiple special meetings, and there might be if we want to be expeditious, and I think that's critical.
Oh, it is critical.
Because I've watched it happen too many times where the candidates, we lose them just because of the time.
Right.
And, you know, and that's one of the reasons why I feel like once we start the process,
You need to be ready to keep
the
it rolling.
professional will take longer before they get started. Once they get started, they're gonna run like a.
So what's a good date for all your officers?
Monday, Tuesday.
Yeah.
She can't do that.
Saturday's good for me.
Yeah, Saturday's good for me.
What's wrong with, this is Wednesday, what's wrong with tomorrow?
Well, he said it's the,
So Volusia League is setting a meeting.
what time is it?
Yeah, we need a 24-hour notice. So how about Friday?
It has to be something.
She can't do Friday.
Friday's not
Monday
good.
now.
Monday
Sat-
works for us.
And Saturday was out why?
Saturday, I'm free, Saturday, Sunday,
Me
Monday.
too.
You're not free Saturday?
No, or
Okay.
Sunday.
Okay, so Monday?
I have a family.
And take 3 things each day, I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine, it's
We
life.
cannot fit that in, but.
That's
I can do Monday after 5, I can do Tuesday after 5, Wednesday after 5.
Monday at 5:30? Monday at 5:30, I will make work for me.
Monday, 5:30.
If you'll advertise it, is the notice out?
I just thought of a technicality. How can we take action on setting a meeting if it's?
Yeah, I know, I thought about that too. Yeah.
The same meeting you would an emergency meeting.
Yeah,
Sure.
calling a meeting is
I mean,
not,
you
is
can
not
call
that type of
it.
action.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm just saying, we
you're not far off the mark.
But calling a meeting is not technically an action.
No,
so-
no, that's just, actually, you set the meeting, you call the meeting. It's not the commission. You-
Okay, so I'm calling a special meeting for Monday at 5:30.
Perfect.
And it sounds like we're gonna go with a firm. I have seen this commission do some UEs in the past, went between, well, after we sleep on things. But chances are that's where we're headed. I heard you say you already have some help for us as far as an RFP. And so we'll still continue to lean on you for a while here and hope that we can benefit from your.
Whatever you need, we'll provide.
Thank you very much.
That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. So we'll see you Monday, 5:30, and meeting adjourned.
Thank you.